While being co-developed alongside Resident Evil 3, series director and producer Shinji Mikami and his team learned that they'd be unable to port Resident Evil 2 to the Sega Saturn without a massive drop in quality, so they began development on a new game. When Mikami asked the higher-ups at Capcom for an extension on development, he was told the quality would need to increase, which made Sega's upcoming Dreamcast console more appealing to launch on. So, for the first time in series history, a mainline Resident Evil title would launch on a console not owned by Sony. Dubbed Code Veronica, it was released in North America on March 28, 2000 for Sega's Dreamcast. However, the next year, Capcom released an updated version in August of 2001 for the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and eventually Nintendo's GameCube, called Code Veronica X. It featured new cutscenes that helped expand on the story. For the most complete experience, I'm playing the X version for this video. While we may have left Raccoon City behind, let's dive into another survival horror experience. In December of 1998, 3 months after the destruction of Raccoon City, Claire Redfield sets her sights on Umbrella's European headquarters in Paris, France to find her brother, Chris. Unfortunately, she's discovered by the facility's security forces and forced to flee. Now, if you can remember, Claire was just a college student when she went to Raccoon City to find Chris the first time. I assume he taught her some self-defense techniques that helped her get through that nightmare and probably picked up battle experience during the event as well, but there's no way she became frickin' Neo from the Matrix in that short of time. Anyway, after being caught by the last man standing, Rodrigo Juan Raval, Claire is taken to an Umbrella-controlled facility on Rockfort Island in the southern hemisphere. After waking up, Rodrigo has a change of heart to free Claire, seeing as the island is under siege by an unknown force, and the T-virus has once again gotten loose and turned the denizens into zombies and monsters. I mean, this is your 4th Resident Evil game by now. Did you expect any different? After a little exploration, Claire will run into another escapee by the name of Steve Burnside. You'll find out eventually that Steve is looking for his dad, who tried to steal company secrets from Umbrella, and the company imprisoned him and his mother as a result. Don't worry, we'll discuss Steve's eccentricities later. Claire decides to call for help by contacting Leon to let Chris know her location. Before entering the island's palace, a ghost will appear. Albert Wesker from the first game has returned from the dead with new superhuman abilities and is the one responsible for the attack on the island. He threatens to use Claire as bait to lure Chris in, as he wants revenge for the events at the Spencer Mansion. He's also there on orders from some unknown agency to collect a sample of the Veronica virus, whatever that is. The Matrix theme still rings strong here, as Wesker wears similar black clothing and has the demeanor and movement of the agents. One of his men calls him away, so he leaves Claire to her devices. After more exploring, the two will run into the facility commander and antagonist Alfred Ashford. This megalomaniac blames Claire for the attack on the island and tries to take her out with a sniper rifle. Eventually, you'll find disturbing videos of what seems like a young Alfred and a sibling doing serial killer stuff and looking at each other longingly. I guess the slogan for the island is "Roll Tide." Anyway, while trying to find their way off the island, Claire and Steve discover that Alfred has completely gone off the deep end and has developed a split personality disorder. He dresses up like his twin sister Alexia and has conversations with himself. While solving puzzles and progressing through the island's set pieces, the two discover a large aircraft capable of escaping the island. I guess Steve went to flight school because he somehow knows how to fly a military aircraft. Claire will need to lift a bridge to clear the path for the plane. The facility is now, of course, set to explode on a timer. Alfred sends a tyrant to block the path, but Claire eliminates it. After lifting the bridge and taking off, the cargo hold will be breached. Claire checks it out to find the same tyrant from the island. Getting creative with a crate in the hold, Claire sends the BOW for a skydive. The two believe they're safe and set a course for Hawaii. Alfred hasn't given up, however, and follows them in a fighter jet. He hijacks the cargo plane's controls and sets its course for a remote Umbrella base in Antarctica. The two get some much needed rest for their trials ahead, and whoa, Steve, that is not okay! The plane crashes into the facility, and naturally, it also has a zombie and monster problem. The two get to work on finding another escape path and eventually clash with Alfred again. Alfred is fatally wounded in the battle and with his dying breath sees his sister Alexia freed from her containment pod. Text files throughout the game indicate that Alexia had been working on T-virus research to prevent Oswell E. Spencer's complete takeover of Umbrella Incorporated. In her research, she discovered a virus in a queen ant that she extracted to mix with the T-virus. Alexia dubbed this the T. Veronica virus, named after the Ashford family's treasured ancestor. The only problem was that this virus strain was unstable unstable and would destroy a human body soon after injection. Alexia figured out that if suspended in stasis for 15 years, she could become immune to its cellular destruction effects. And naturally, today just happens to make 15 years. What a coincidence. Claire and Steve attempt to escape the base after Alfred's defeat, but get confronted by another monstrosity, Nosferatu. This is the mutated Alexander Ashford, father to Alexia and Alfred. What's with all the A names? Claire puts Nosferatu down, and her and Steve attempt another escape in a vehicle. It's too bad nothing is ever simple, and Alexia uses her newfound abilities to capture the duo once more. In the meantime, Chris Redfield returns to grace us with his manliness. Chris arrives at Rockfort Island after being contacted by Leon. After meeting Rodrigo and having to kill a giant worm to save him, from being digested anyway, Rodrigo informs Chris of the fact that Claire is already in the wind. Chris then has to retread Claire's steps to find another way off the island to get to Antarctica. In doing so, Wesker sees Chris on the security cameras and sets up traps to trigger hunters to attack Chris if triggered. Eventually, the two meet up and have a fairly one-sided battle where Wesker displays his new superhuman strength again. Feels like a blood feud is being established here. After the encounter, Chris finds another fighter jet to get him to the Antarctic base. Once there, Chris will have to follow Claire's path again to free her from Alexia's clutches. I would imagine that Chris probably gets PTSD flashbacks when he finds himself in the replica Spencer mansion that Alexia built. Anyway, Chris will need to find a serum for Claire if she was poisoned in the Nosferatu fight. Claire will tell Chris that Steve is still somewhere in the base and they can't leave without saving him first. Claire goes looking for him only to find that Alexia infected him with the T. Veronica virus and he's mutated into a monster. After trying to kill Claire, he has a moment of clarity and saves her from Alexia's clutches instead. Alexia doesn't take kindly to this and fatally wounds him for his insubordination. Steve declares his one-sided love for Claire and gives up the ghost. Back with Chris, he'll need to bring the jewels of the Ashford family to the secret entrance. Alfred and Alexander weren't too bad, they were already dead when he got there after all. But what about Alexia? Upon returning to the replica main hall, Wesker confronts Alexia to retrieve a T. Veronica sample from her body. Alexia answers by melting her skin away and trying to kill Wesker, who pulls more Matrix moves to avoid her attacks, and finally decides to let Chris handle her instead. Chris battles Alexia until she falls and drops her jewel. You've played enough Resident Evil by now to know she's not really dead. Chris finds Claire sobbing over Steve's corpse and heads to initiate the self-destruct sequence for the base. After the siblings reunite, they make a mad dash to the escape hangar. Oops, looks like Alexia isn't done with Chris. He finally puts her down with a rocket launcher and the two have one final encounter with Wesker as he threatens Claire. Chris convinces him to give her up for a mano-a-mano fight. Chris gets dog-walked by Wesker as he's, human. After a creative use of some girders and a convenient explosion, Wesker taunts Chris that he'll get him next time. Even without Alexia, Wesker's men were able to retrieve Steve's body for the T. Veronica virus, so he got what he wanted. Chris makes a mad dash back to Claire and the two escape via fighter jet. Once again, Chris vows vengeance on Umbrella for their horrible experiments. I mean, it's been 4 games now. Is that ever going to happen? I think Capcom accomplished what they were going for when it comes to wrapping up Claire's story after Raccoon City. We got some new antagonists, a returning Albert Wesker, who, at least for me, kind of steals the show, and the reunification of the Redfield siblings. Umbrella's operations get more exposition outside of Raccoon City, which is a nice change. But as I said before, it doesn't feel like anything got done towards actually dealing with the company. We get Claire in their HQ for 5 seconds, and then it's just a story about escaping Rockfort Island and then the Antarctica base. Chris's story feels a little wasted here too. We finally get to see him again after the events of RE96, and all he gets to do is try and find Claire in places she isn't even in anymore. It just kind of felt extraneous. Like, if Chris's section was completely removed from the game, what did we actually miss? The only real thing would be his encounters with Wesker to further their rivalry, and that wasn't even in the base game. Not to mention, I think Claire is badass enough to stand on her own 2 feet, but they kind of pushed the need for guys like Steve and Chris to come save her. I also feel like there was a bit of hit and miss when it came to the characters. I think Claire, Chris, and Wesker were given a fair shake when it comes to the next step in their characterization, but Alfred, Alexia, and Steve fall kind of short to me. Alfred and Alexia are meant to be these tortured genius twins who are desperate to reclaim their family's glory after their father tarnished it, and don't get me wrong, some of that shines through, but they also went out of their way to make them sound and feel like over-the-top comic book villains. Alfred can't go 2 seconds without laughing like a poor man's Joker, and Alexia is much the same once she awakens. Not to mention, we get more of Alexia's portrayal from Alfred anyway. And finally, we need to talk about Steve. I hadn't played Code Veronica before, but everything I read about it proclaimed that Steve was the worst part about the game. I thought, it couldn't be that bad, right? Well, as it turns out, it could. Look, I think they wrote a good foundation for the character himself. A cocky teenager looking for his deadbeat dad to escape from Umbrella's clutches and come to terms with his mortality. There's definitely something there that could work. Unfortunately, they also threw in this weird one-sided love thing with Claire that almost comes across non-consensual when he tries to kiss her when she's sleeping, or proclaims his love to her as he's dying. I wouldn't say it's the worst thing I've seen, but it really did nothing for his character. And now we have to talk about the main reason these characters feel a little silly. You may have noticed that I didn't include a voice acting section for my Resident Evil 3 video. The reality was that I didn't feel it was worth continuing to talk about in every video, as Resident Evil 2 really cleaned up the performances, and RE3 followed suit. I figured there was no way we could go backwards, right? Well, here we are. I would say that Claire is probably the best performance of the main cast, and sounds like she did in RE2.
What was wrong?
Oh, nothing. Just a giant cockroach that had to be stepped on. I've got to contact Leon and tell him to let my brother know he's being monitored. It's a good thing I have access to an outside connection from here.
No better or worse, at least, which is fine. Chris is also okay, but some lines definitely come across a little odd.
Wesker? He's still alive? You get out of here, Claire.
But what about?
As a surviving member of STARS, I have to finish this.
I can't really explain it, but it feels off. Wesker is the cool villain, but even he has some weird laughs that sound really forced. And then we get to Alexia and Alfred. They both try to pull off this highbrow noble accent, but with the whole insane geniuses thing they try to pull, it comes off really annoying.
Redfield! How dare you interfere with my operation?
What are you talking about?
You let yourself be captured so you could lead your people to this base!
I have no idea what you're babbling about.
You don't fool me! I am Alfred Ashford, commander of this base.
Oh? You must be one of Umbrella's lower level officers if you're in command of a backwater base like this one.
How dare you! Welcome, Claire. Consider the area you are in a special playground I have prepared just for you. Please try and keep me amused, and do not disappoint me by dying too soon. I so want to enjoy this.
Alexia?
That is how I dispose of insignificant bugs, said the spider to the fly. How do you wish to die?
Steve is the most egregious of the bunch, as whoever voiced him made him sound like a complete goober.
Oh, shoot!
Who are you?
Huh? You're not a zombie. Well, great. Wait right there. I'm coming over. Sorry about that little misunderstanding, but I thought you were another one of those
Shut up. Make one wrong move and I'll shoot.
Relax, beautiful. I said I was sorry. My name's Steve.
What's wrong, Steve? Shoot him!
Wait! I can't! No!
Steve! No! Ah!
Father! Father. 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 Warm.
Steve, you've got to hang in there, okay? My brother's come to save us. We're getting out of here.
Your brother kept his promise. I'm sorry, I cannot.
What are you saying?
I'm glad that I met you. I love you. Claire.
Just why? There was no reason to have him voice that way, and since he's such a big part of the game, it's not like you'll be seeing him for only 5 seconds.
Go on, get out of here. This place is finished. I don't know, it might have been a special forces team. But in any case, this prison's been taken over. Troops are wiped out.
Even Ricardo, who has a very small role, is way better. So between Steve and the Ashford twins, you've got a lot of annoying dialogue to listen to throughout the game, which is just unfortunate. Alright, let's move on to the gameplay now. Ever since I covered the basic mechanics with Resident Evil 96, I usually showcase the new mechanics that the sequels bring to the table. As it stands, Code Veronica really doesn't have many new standout features or improvements to speak of. In fact, there's even some regressions. Let's get to it. The first and largest change you'll notice is the lack of pre-rendered backgrounds. Since Capcom developed the game for the stronger Dreamcast, they were able to get real-time rendered 3D environments for this title. I loved the pre-rendered backgrounds, but the series was always going to grow out of them, and I'd say they did a pretty good job. The fixed third-person camera angles are still there, but they have a slightly new functionality by following the characters in some instances, rather than shifting perspective completely. The next change would be the dual-wielding system. Code Veronica has a couple of firearms that Chris, Claire, and Steve can dual-wield to shoot at multiple enemies should the situation require it. Cool feature, but nothing revolutionary. The zapping system sort of returns. Chris and Claire will be able to share their item box loot as you change from each's perspective, and items that Claire claimed during her escape won't be available for Chris when he follows later. Not quite the same function, but pretty close. There's a caveat, however. There's one instance of nonsensical design where you'll need a certain item that you used at the beginning of the game as Claire and then way later as Chris to obtain the Magnum. As Claire, there's a fire extinguisher you'll need to put out a fire on Rockfort Island early in the game. Once the extinguisher is spent, it shows that it's empty. You're probably thinking, why would I keep this? In fact, Claire will never use it again. Even Chris has no use for it on Rockfort Island. But guess what? He does need it at the Antarctic base, as there's a way to refill it so you can clear a path to the powerful Magnum. Like, why do that? If you don't know about it ahead of time, why would you on your first playthrough? You've probably discarded the thing and screwed yourself. Mind-boggling decision. As is tradition, the map sees a nice quality of life touch. Now you can even see helpful markers to indicate where the item boxes and typewriters are. It'll even show you key items in rooms too. Now for the regressions. I say regressions, I mostly mean the lack of the really cool features that RE3 brought. For whatever reason, difficulty settings disappear for this game. I found that Claire's section was easier than Chris's, so maybe they were trying to emulate the first game again. I remarked that I thought the free stair movement in RE3 was a step in the right direction. For some reason, this game went back to the old system of having to press the action button to climb or descend fully. It's actually worse than before, as they retain the ability for the enemies to walk up or down the stairs freely. This can result in some awkward situations where you'll have to wait for a zombie to get up the stairs before you can go down. What the hell, Capcom? The lack of ammo crafting was really noticeable too. I know it only existed in RE3, but once you showcase a feature, it can be hard to remove it. I was constantly looking around for gunpowder to make the ammo I needed at the time, and would be disappointed when I realized it didn't exist. Ammo drops were more plentiful as a result, of course, but I don't know, I just preferred the crafting system. The only real comparison is that you can find specialized gunpowder to combine with the bowgun arrows to create explosive arrows. Guess they took inspiration from The Legend of Zelda on that one. Speaking of guns, let's talk about them briefly. Unlike the previous games, there are no exclusive weapons in Code Veronica, as both Chris and Claire can use them all. The series staples all make returns here. Claire and Chris will each get their own handgun, of course. Both can be upgraded. Claire will get the same burst fire option that Leon had in RE2, and Chris will get an enhanced Glock after using a workbench. Now, maybe it was just me, but I really didn't see much different with Chris's pistol. It says enhanced on the tin, but I felt like it wasn't putting zombies down any faster than it did before, but perhaps I just wasn't paying attention. The shotgun returns, but it's pretty late in the game. Chris can get it on his trip through Rockfort Island. I did notice a faster baseline firing rate for it, but it loses its ability to always pop a zombie's head if they got close and you aimed up. That's a huge loss for the gun in my opinion. Nothing felt more satisfying than seeing their heads explode like watermelons. In fact, now that I think about it, I think head pops can happen, but it must be extremely rare and not emphasized at all, because I can't recall it happening on my playthrough. Really sad to see. The bowgun and grenade launcher make a comeback. The bowgun gets a slight change from its appearance in RE2. Now it'll only fire 1 bolt at a time instead of 3. This honestly feels incredibly weak and will take way too many bolts to kill zombies. They usually won't stagger either, so you'll probably get bitten for your trouble. The only real benefit is that it has a fast firing rate and the explosive arrows are real powerhouses. Very useful against the big enemies and bosses. The grenade launcher is the same as it always was. The AK-47 is available for use, but I felt like it also lacks stopping power. It obviously can fire quickly, but it didn't drop enemies as fast as I'd like for what should be a power weapon. I only found 1 extra mag for it too, so it's pretty limited in ammo. As I mentioned before, there's a select couple of weapons that can be dual wielded. There are some machine pistols, MAC-10s, and even a key item called the Golden Lugers that can be used briefly. The main benefit to this mechanic is that you can fire at multiple enemies in a pinch if you get surrounded, which is really nice. You won't find any extra ammo for these though, so you'll have to pick your targets carefully. Can't go without a magnum, so that's up for grabs too, provided you kept the fire extinguisher the whole game. Nothing special about it though, it's the same hand cannon it always is. Other than that, there's Alfred's sniper rifle you get to use very briefly for the Nosferatu fight. It only carries 7 rounds, but it has a scope you can use to fire at a distance. Lastly, there's the linear launcher for Chris to use against Alexia in her final winged insect phase. It also has a scope. No infinite power weapons exist for the main campaign, which is a bit of a letdown. Even costumes are lacking, as I think there's only 1 special costume for Claire. Backtracking is probably the most prevalent in this title compared to its predecessors. RE3 had a lot, but Code Veronica will have you completing 1 objective in 1 area only to go to the next to do something else, and then send you back to the first area again. And what's worse, Chris will be running through the same areas as Claire did, so you'll feel like you're going in circles even more. Yes, some new rooms get featured, but honestly, it feels kinda lazy on Capcom's part. Okay, time to talk about the scenery. The story begins in the devastated Rockfort Island prison, immediately setting a mood of chaos and desperation. The compound is half destroyed by sudden aerial bombardment, so you're greeted by collapsed watchtowers, burning wreckage, and roaming zombies freed from their cells. Inside, cramped corridors, solitary cells, and the guillotine yard puzzle recall the oppressive dread of the Spencer Mansion, but with a harsher industrial edge. Key encounters like the giant worm fight make resource management critical and gradually teach how the island's interlocking passageways fit together. Beyond the gates lies the military training facility, Rockfort's sprawling centerpiece. Part military academy, part aristocratic manor. It contains lecture halls, mock battle arenas, and surveillance rooms draped in outdated grandeur. The building's looping design, full of keycard doors, hidden elevators, and clever shortcut reveals, rewards meticulous exploration. Bandersnatch enemies, able to lash across rooms with elastic arms, keep tension high as you wind through long corridors and outdoor drill yards. Set apart from the more utilitarian complexes is the elegant private residence, an intimate living space for the Ashford elite. Richly decorated parlors, private bedrooms, and tasteful sitting rooms offer a quieter, more domestic atmosphere than the surrounding island. Yet menace persists. Zombies and occasional bandersnatches lurk in the shadows, and documents scattered throughout give chilling insight into the Ashford family's obsession with lineage and control. This mid-game detour provides fresh story context and a brief change of pacing, highlighting the island's dual nature as both fortress and home. At the island's heart stands the Ashford Palace, a Gothic showpiece of aristocratic excess, concealing Umbrella's darkest secrets. Red carpeted staircases, mirrored portrait galleries, and hidden laboratories mirror Alfred Ashford's fractured psyche and his fixation on his twin sister Alexia. The palace hosts some of the game's most striking set pieces, including balcony firefights and multi-level puzzles that weave back into earlier areas. The airport hangar and cargo plane sequence provide a sudden, high-stakes surge of action. Claire's frantic escape, culminating in a mid-air boss fight with the Tyrant, is one of the series' first large-scale, real-time set pieces made possible by the game's fully 3D engine. Dynamic camera work and the sharp change of pace lend the game a cinematic flair without sacrificing survival horror tension. The second act unfolds in the frozen Antarctic base, where sterile laboratories, geothermal power rooms, and shimmering ice caverns create an eerie blend of science fiction and natural menace. Glass-walled observation decks and ice-crusted mining shafts form a starkly beautiful maze, while hidden enemies and collapsing structures sustain constant pressure. Temperature-controlled puzzles and methodical backtracking keep the classic Resident Evil formula alive. Late in the game, control shifts to Chris Redfield, adding a strategic layer as you revisit Antarctic areas now overrun with stronger enemies and structural collapse. The transport corridor, a complex of elevators and cargo lifts leading to the final arena, becomes a test of how well players manage resources and item sharing between Claire and Chris. Re-exploring spaces once cleared with Claire, only to find them transformed, reinforces the series' signature theme of evolving, treacherous environments. By weaving together the devastated prison, complex training facility, secluded private residence, opulent Ashford Palace, and the icy expanse of the Antarctic base, Resident Evil Code Veronica X crafts one of the series' most diverse and interconnected settings. While the game stays rooted in classic puzzle box survival horror, its sweeping structure and theatrical set pieces give this early 2000s installment a grand, globe-spanning identity all its own. Now it's time for the enemies. It wouldn't be a Resident Evil game without zombies and infected dogs. Nothing special or new about them though, so just sink ammo into them to put them down for good. The one standout enemy for Code Veronica is the annoying Bandersnatch. This is a weird, long-armed BOW that can stretch to get attacks from a distance. They can also use their arm to climb up terrain if needed. These things are a pain in the ass to run from, so I'd recommend spending as much ammo as you can spare to kill them. There's a giant worm you encounter in one of the outdoor areas, but you can just run away from it. You will need to fight it as Chris when he arrives at Rockfort Island, however. It's not too difficult, just dodge it and shoot. As always, spiders are around, but still nothing to write home about. There's even a big one that Alexia calls in to kill Chris, but there's no need to fight it. A T-virus lizard called an albinoid is around for a short stint that can be dodged, but will return in a specific water area. It can electrify the water, so make sure to grab the key item quick. The damn hunters return again, and they are as irritating as ever. They got a little tougher and won't always go down when hit with a shotgun blast, so you'll need to time your shots carefully to stun them and then quickly follow up while they're knocked down. They'll probably cut you down to size otherwise. There's even a new poison variant too, because I guess Capcom thought these things weren't dangerous enough. You'll find a section with moths that's kind of annoying, as they'll lay eggs on you that will hatch to damage and poison you. Kind of hard to avoid, but shooting them is pointless as they'll respawn infinitely. Bosses aren't plentiful in Code Veronica, as there's only really the two Tyrant fights, Nosferatu and Alexia. The first Tyrant fight is simple. Blast him with some BOW rounds in the grenade launcher and leave him in the dirt. Just don't get too close to him. Now the second fight has a bit of an interesting reputation. When fighting the Tyrant on the cargo plane, you'll need to use the spring on the wall to fling a crate at him for some damage. Keep in mind, the crate has a significant cooldown. The amount of damage you do to him with conventional weapons will dictate how many times you need to use the crate. I believe it takes 5 or 6 crate attacks if you do 0 damage to him. Now the interesting part is, so many people have gotten soft lock for this battle as they didn't have enough ammo going into the fight. You wouldn't know it was coming on a first playthrough, so you might be more generous with ammo usage on Rockfort Island. And without enough ammo, you probably can't last long enough in the fight to beat the Tyrant without dying over and over. Thankfully, I did read about this prior to playing, so I saved a lot of my ammo at the beginning by using my knife way more than I ever would normally. Explosive arrows are a godsend here, so save them up if you can. Nosferatu is not super hard, just annoying. If you don't get close to him, he'll spray purple poison gas at you. This poison can't be cured with blue herbs, so be careful. Use Alfred's sniper rifle to shoot him in the heart and dodge the poison the best you can. Alexia is the final boss with 3 phases, technically. The first is her humanoid form, where Chris fights her in the replica main hall. She has a deadly grab, so keep your distance. Her range attack has her flinging her blood around the room, which will burst into flames, so just avoid it. Put a few magnum rounds in her and she'll fall over. Her second phase sees her turning into a giant queen insect and using her tentacles to attack Chris. She's stationary, so dump ammo and avoid her little bug friends who will sprout their own mandibles to hit you. Do enough damage and she'll go airborne for her third phase. Chris will need to grab the nearby linear launcher to fire energy blasts at the flying Alexia. She can be hard to hit and will spit acid at Chris in waves, so time the shots well. One shot from the launcher and she's swatted like the bug she is. You'll likely have noticed I was a bit more critical of Code Veronica than I was of the previous games. It isn't because I don't like this title, far from it. I just think they may have fallen short on the pace of innovation that we saw from RE96 to RE2 and then RE3. With no real standout features and some questionable choices in the character portrayals, it kind of made the formula feel a little stale. And while it's easily a lot of the community's favorite Resident Evil, I've also seen a lot of sentiment that it's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the family. I'd be inclined to lean more to the latter. I enjoyed my time with it, but I don't think I'll be chomping at the bit to return to it anytime soon. I could see this being the next game Capcom will consider for a modern remake so it can get the love it deserves. With that being said, it's almost time to leave the classic format behind. My next 2 videos will cover Remake 2002 and Resident Evil 0. Both titles launched in the same year, and it would make little sense to do 0 without Remake. Hope to see you there. Leave me a comment if you think Code Veronica is the best in the series, or maybe you feel the same way I did. Whatever the case, I appreciate you. As always, stay safe out there.